So I've got a lot of little subjects to talk about. Um, and so I'll just go over what they are. And it's basically now just kind of like more or less what my plans are. I'm pretty much getting a better feel for things. Of course, still, I mean, I've only been doing this for June, July, August, September, October, 5 months. So, take it as you will, but it will be interesting to go back someday and look at my older videos and ask what I was thinking about half the things that I said, and also hear. Hopefully that number will go down, but at least I think I have an overall plan, and I also just have some information to share about a rare case of some circumstance that may come up. So more specifically, I'm going to talk about the state of flux that an actively being operating system that's actively being built is under. Different things that can happen, and what my plan is within that obvious reality of what the situation is. I'm going to talk about how to recognize one side effect of the recent state of flux is now I know how to pull up. There's a certain error that I see. I could tell what an easy solution for it is. I'll point that out. It has to do with the header, which I happen to have a build that during a very, very short time there was part of the overall state of flux and work on things. Obviously, when people are building things and repairing things, not only are they fixing things, but it is a balancing act, and so some things might stop to work for a little bit. But one of the good side effects of that was that now if I see a certain set of errors, I could, and I'm going to share what those are. There's a pretty easy fix for it. Then I'm just going to talk about the basic state of flux of patches, even outside of Haiku, as you know, Pkgsrc gets updated or other things. Tool sets get updated. There may or may not be some growing pains, or patches may or may not work anymore. And I'll talk a little bit about what the situation is and what I need to do to try to get things a little less fragmented. But right now I feel like I'm in a rhythm, and I feel comfortable. So far, every patch that I've done, I feel comfortable with, and that's a big difference than where I started out with. I'll tell you that much. Then I'm also going to talk about the way I have things set up and what the importance of the settings are if you happen to go to GitHub and check out my repository, and how that repository would be used in relation to Diger's repository, and what my goals are when I do make patches. So, and I'll talk about a few small things, or actually significant things that do happen that could be problematic, and I kind of don't know what to do. I guess try to get a mailing list at this stage. I'm also just busy as it is, and using as much extra time as I can to build as much as I can, and to see if anything changed, and let people know if I think they would want to know, or what the changes are, and pass the information on as I find it. So I'll start with that. So let's see. As I mentioned maybe a few videos ago, I re-downloaded a nightly from, it's probably a week old now, I would say, and of course the operating system has been worked on July when I got my first nightly, and this is GCC4. And to digress a little bit, the reason why I'm doing GCC4 is because I think eventually we're going to get there. So if I could find answers now, it would be a smoother transition than if everybody just starts to look for patches in GC4 when they get there. I can't really make that generalization as being true, but at least I know if I get the information out there, it's at least available. So anyway, to get back to what I was saying, I noticed that the OS is working a lot faster. Builds are faster. But I also noticed there was an error that came up that I don't remember how I figured out what the answer was, but it was a fairly simple answer. Basically, when various packages would try to build, there'd be this error with using the terminology, something like, let's see, I've got a mess here, but it's something like strncasecmp. And it'll come up in various ways, not declared, not in this scope, or something like that. And I think I actually grepped. I went to the system header directory and I just grepped and looked for what files had that, and the strings header in the POSIX directory looked the most appropriate of all the different files that had that kind of verbiage in it. I've done the grep -r and then whatever you're looking for amongst text files before in the terminal. That's just all you do. And so I found strings.h. I tried it and it worked. So now every single time I get an error with that kind of the variable strncasecmp, I just look at the name of the file, go to edit the file, add it, you make an include statement, pound include space, caret strings.h and right caret, save it, and I haven't had a failure with that yet. So what ended up happening is during the build, they ended up, basically that's not going to happen anymore for the most part. If there's a program that's looking for, Stephen A. Smith noticed this, and he, I think his name's Stippy. So this is like, after I downloaded this, it was probably just a few days ago, actually. Yeah, just like 2 days ago. So there's a header called string.h, and some of these programs they'll have an include statement for string.h, but not strings. So basically, code was added to get it so that if a program has a string.h header, but it needs the variables that are included in strings.h in Haiku, it'll just redirect to that, and I thought that was very good. But I'm still going to just keep going since it's so easy to fix. I'm just going to keep going and going to keep using this build that I have here, and I'm going to keep including, adding that include statement, just because I know what the error is. I don't know if I want to start over again. I might start over again. Get a new nightly from a couple days ago, but I don't think I want to, because I've already gone through two categories. So so when things are in a state of flux, you're going to have stuff that isn't in there, or that was in there a week ago that's not there, or something was missing a week ago that's added back. And that's just the nature of building things that are basically software based. Overall, I think there's been a vast improvement in the operating system as far as speed's concerned. But there's a bit of a state of flux for patches, and it's not just related to Haiku. So I started out with, I think, the package source from quarter 2, and I may have downloaded the package source from quarter 3. And they may have even released package source for quarter 4 already, and I just haven't downloaded it. Or it might have been I started with 1 and had moved over to 2, and I'm not into 3 yet. I'm not sure the exact one it is, but in my case, but the point is that in my case, there is a set of builds for Python, and one of those sets is Python 27. They have a 26, 27, a 33, and a 34 is available in package source. Python 27 was moved up one version. Let's look and see what that was. It was kind of late. Let's see what's going on here. Usually it's on the make file. What's going on here? Or it could be that it's I know it's okay, so now it's 2.7. I don't know what. How do I even know this? Let's see. I'm not doing very well right here. Right, so what was I doing? Work. Let's see, language. Python 27. This is 2.7.8, and earlier when I was working on this, one of two things are true. Either the default was 2.7.7, or I decided to just edit my make file and make it use 2.7.7 instead of 2.7.8 as it is now. But the effect of that is that where, Deiger had built patches for Python 2.77, I believe, because it just built perfectly. Not perfectly, but just as good as I could do. And I don't think I had to do anything. I don't actually. I have to go back and look at my video to see whether I added anything, or it was just as pat. But I remember specifically, at least when I was using the hybrid on my other machine, that it built without a problem. I didn't have to do anything for Python 2.7. That didn't happen here, and then I looked into it. Oh, okay, so it's a different version. I came to the realization that the patches need to really actually be updated for 2.8. And this could get numerous. Newer versions are released all the time for different kinds of software out there. And until such time as the patches can actually get folded into the main line, it's just okay, let's download these package sources, let's start building. Okay, what didn't build? Okay, let's change the patches, let's update the patches, stick them in the repository, and the quarter's over. So let's download the next. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But seeing is how I got to the point where I was attempting a Cairo build. I was almost through glut. I'd gotten pretty far before things were broken. But I had also done a lot of things. In this case, and in this circumstance, I haven't even messed with the specs at all. Specs meaning, actually, I'm just using Haiku's headers. That's all I've done so far. And I think I've noticed that there are, I'm pretty sure, the first time I went over the stats of the archivers category, it was just like, where are the headers? You know, it was like, oh, we need a lot of headers. I'm not really seeing that right now. I have done nothing, and I can't do anything. I don't have write access to the, and I haven't used specs at all. That's not activated in my settings right now, and I was able to build every one of the archivers that I had built before. I didn't try any of the ones that I hadn't built before, but I was able to get that far. And of the ones that I was able to make patches for every one that needed a patch. But I'm going to say some more about my repository because it's a holistic system. The settings are an integral part of an overall successful build rate with Haiku, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's fact. It's probably the best way to go. Because there still is a lot of patching. Haiku's has its own identity, but a lot of software is crafted towards Linux or older versions of Unix. So that means a lot of patching. So if as much patching as we can avoid, great. But I'll get into my repo, I think, fairly soon. But anyway, my plan is to go through that cycle. I'm going to try to rebuild everything I've done before. The only difference that I've noticed in builds as far as build failures are concerned, which is a different criteria than build success. I think I've pointed out that I think I'm having more build success because I'm not having issues with missing headers. I'll have to look and see whether stopgap headers were added. I don't really have an explanation as for why that is. I have a very general idea why the strings issue temporarily came up. If you were to download it nightly tonight, which is October 30th, 2014, you won't have the same issue I had. It was really like a week's time window for me, then I got lucky. So, the good news is I think I've never built something. I'm hoping that I'm hoping these patches will still work. I'm hoping that, but I'm not going to complain if the inclusion of the redirect to the strings header from the string causes my patches to become problematic because they add the string, that something gets declared twice. I'm not sure if that's the case. I don't think it is. I think you can actually do that. So I'm going to keep patching this way. Because it's easy and I can identify it easily, and I could do automated builds, and I could see I could look at my list, see what failed, and just deal with them as they come up. So getting back to this, so right now I have, out of what I consider to be really 104 archivers that are available, I have still I have 76 built, just like I had before, and I produced 16 patch sets for this category. But also included in that, and I put them up at GitHub, so it's under it's Linux CPA's GitHub account for the patches. It's not done yet. I've gotten through the archivers, I've gotten through the benchmarks, and I'm working on biology. And I may get back to that tomorrow or the next day. Probably 3 or 4 days from the weekend, because today's Thursday. But right now, the reason why I'm using Pkgsrc right now is because I could be effective. For one, I don't really know how to successfully build a recipe, and I haven't yet. if I really focused on it, I'd probably get through whatever the roadblock is, maybe in a day. I don't want to get distracted. I want to stay, because there are issues really actually to deal with. First of all, I want to get everything that Deiger's patched for, or help him get it caught up to the version of Pkgsrc that's out there. So, if, for example, when the Qt4 libraries in the X11 category, at least in Pkgsrc, were built for me, is because I was using one version or two versions newer than the versions his patches were made for. So there were some file changes. Some of the patches didn't apply because they can't, because the file structures change. Literally, if one line is added to a file, any patch for that file has to be redone. So probably would be a good thing if, you know, we can get patches added in over the various projects. That's a long-term goal. Right now I want to get to the point where I think, okay, this is as far as I could build. It's a reasonably good start for us to be at, or a reasonably good place for us to be at, so that people could just start out being at the point where they're just about to build Cairo, or they're building Cairo, or, you know, X11 is built, and you know, we're right there, just outside the border, to be able to make all the apps we want, and it's available in an automated fashion. I want to keep that up. I don't want to lose that. And then once that's stable, then I'm going to learn Haiku Porter, and then I'm going to get these things and try to combine them into the unit patches that Haiku Ports wants. And try to work on building recipes, but I really do think that's going to take a large collaborative effort from a lot of people. And then, you know, it's kind of like the Dragonfly BSD thing. You know, they were using FreeBSD's ports, and they just found it too difficult to maintain because it wasn't portable enough. So that's why they moved over to Pkgsrc. And that's the only thing. Pkgsrc is going to be around. It's going to be maintained. The recipes are going to keep being made. It's just going to happen. I'm going to look up one day and say, oh, that's Python 278.77. I better change my patches. And it's like that versus... Anyway, eventually, hopefully we'll get there. But it's right now, for me to keep tabs and be able to give feedback and information to other people that it may be important to provide that information to. I'm doing the Pkgsrc thing because I could just get going. I could just start doing the builds. The recipes are there. They're called makefiles, but the same thing. They're there, and I can see. I'm going to go over a little bit of my setup structure and just give some examples of some things that are important when using, and how my repository fits into Deiger's. So I consider my repository supplemental to Deiger's. Deiger is more experienced than I am, but also I want to add to what Deiger has already made, but so Deiger can maintain what he's done. You know, he's done stuff like the Qt libraries for X11, Python, MIT Kerberos, things like that. Whereas me, I could add strings headers to things. You know, I could build just a bunch of things, you know, like 76 archivers. You know, I could do more or less the long distance, small step things, and he can do the big mountainous projects. And together, I really do honestly think we can get pretty much up to the edge. He's more of a skilled programmer than I am, but once I learn a pattern, I know how to solve it, and I just go with it. So at least if I keep this up, I know we at least have 4,800 packages we can build, and there were other ones that Deiger had built that I just couldn't figure out how to get working under the or didn't put the time in to to get it working in the next incremental newer set of packages. um, but I'll just use an example right here. So right now I'm building bind90. This is one important example of many numerous things. A lot of the solutions that I have for these builds are actually in the settings. They're not actually patches. I know I've mentioned this before. There were things like, the math library. There's a number of issues that can happen when you're using package source. How about that? Create a build. In fact, there's probably more issues to start with. There's of the larger set of things that can go wrong when you try to build something. There's one additional thing that can go wrong if you're using package source to start with. But it's fairly easily overcome by a number of methods. And thinking about this, I want to use a method that allows some identification as to what solutions apply to various packages, rather than using a global setting. But I'm going to start with the global settings and slowly evolve away from using those. So, all right, so let's just overview. I'm building bind99, and in this case, the one circumstance where package source should actually make things worse for you is if package source itself wants to use hard links in the build process. And I really have to decide what I want to do about this circumstance and whether it's worth doing it on a case-by-case basis or just changing the global setting or requesting the global setting be changed. So I'll just get into all this. So the only benchmark program that I haven't rebuilt yet is a program called DNSPerf. So once I build bind99, I expect that DNSPerf will build. It may have a missing definition for strncasecmp, and then I'll just add the header, and I'm done. I'll make the patch, and I'll move on. But the reason why it's failing is because some portion of the build process is calling for a hard link rather than a symbolic link. So that being the case, I have the tool set to work with it. I can complain about the hard links, but at the end of the day, I got to work with it. So there are two things you can actually do in package source to deal with this issue. There's one global setting you can set, and that, to my mind, seems much more appealing with respect to issues that come as a result of using package source. The problem with that, however, actually, you know what? I don't think that's an issue. There's actually three ways. So there's a setting, and I'll just go into here, I guess, because it's just getting too abstract. There's a setting over here in package source in the make directory called tools. It basically this is just a set of settings where package source is told if you want to use gzip in the build process, this is where you find it in the host system. Or this is the command you use in the host system to do effectively what these things do over here on the left. It's actually portable enough that if the command for true was some completely different word, I would imagine that completely different word could be used, and then package source would actually sub in that completely different word for that. But I'm, of course, digressing here. The issue here is the hard links. Here's the setting for hard links. Actually, here's the setting for hard links. Now, before, if you just basically, if you just run the ln command, at least the way ln is actually being built with Haiku, the command will fail. It has to actually have a switch, the option for it to be symbolic, so ln minus s. So if I change this global, all I got to do is, if I want forevermore this bind 99 to not fail because of what I'm basically going to say is, if I put a minus s here and I save this, then whenever Pkgsrc tries to use the ln command, it'll actually use ln minus s. Which could be a solution, but if Pkgsrc tries to use ln minus s, it'll do ln minus s minus s. And I found in my previous experience that wasn't an issue. The ln minus s would just do symbolic, and the other minus s would just kind of be ignored. I didn't have failures because of that. So this will work. But you can also put this setting in your make.conf file, or if you're daisy chaining settings into the make.conf file like I am, which I'm going to end up probably creating a rather elaborate set of settings for Haiku, you can place that, you can actually not modify this, and you can place that tools_platform ln ? Equals, or some derivative of that. I think, it has to be, the verbiage might have to be tools.built in. I'm not clear, and I don't even know if I looked it up. I'd be able to find. I have to find out by experimenting. But nonetheless, you just take that and you put it in the make.conf file, and from there on out, Pkgsrc will always use ln minus s when ln is called for. So that's one way to do it, but it would be best that I wouldn't have to do this, and when Pkgsrc is downloaded, and this is a file specifically for Haiku, that anybody that uses Haiku would always have this setting in it, if that was an optimal setting. Seems like it could be, but it's a little bit of more of a shotgun approach rather than a scalpel. As I mentioned before, there might be parts of Pkgsrc they're just going to use ln and not ln minus s. And also, this setting can't do anything. It cannot change the fact that there are some bits of source code that have been tarred up with hard links embedded in the tars. If you try to unzip it, it's just not going to work. That simple. You need another platform to unzip that. So this won't overcome that. It deals with a good portion of it, but not all of them. Another approach that's a little more precise is that when you find out that the package, has a problem with hard links specifically, the way you recognize that is it'll say creating hard link is not supported. You can actually use a setting for just the package. Of course, this could end up becoming, tedious. But eventually, you can actually, the goal would be to have the Pkgsrc make files for each one of these packages, and or some setting that specifically is targeted for a package, but not in the make file, that'll cause, for that package, when the hard link command is called, it'll actually do ln minus s instead of the hard link called it and asked for. Pkgsrc is that dynamic. It really is a very, very good, well-suited tool set. As I said before, it'll set out the math library very successfully. It is pretty darn effective of taking care of missing library network issues, but not completely effective. And actually, I'll go over some of those things. But it's mostly targeted, at least that I've seen and that I've found, to deal with configure files, make files. I haven't tried to see what would happen, or how I'd even approach causing, say, the strings.h header to automatically be injected into the files that it needs to go into. But that's for another day. So let's just take a look at this bind99 situation. Did I close that? It looks like I did, which is silly. So what I was trying to do was, I'll just actually go into net. Bind99. This should fill rather quickly. It's already done most of the build. There it is, and there's the hardlink operation not supported. Now, I don't think I saved. I'm going to use PE. I don't think I saved that. Actually, I did. Actually, well, that didn't work. Well, the reason why it didn't work is I'd actually have to make clean and start over again, and then it would work. Because what happens is package source, when you run the make file the first time, it'll load all the settings from the make file, from the make.conf. Anything you have daisy chained to the make.conf, it'll load all that stuff up and put it into something called a build link. And then from that, until you make clean, the build link has those settings in it. And once it gets past the toolchain wrapper stage, I believe, they're in there. So I'm actually going to have to make clean nonetheless. I'm not going to get anywhere with this. In fact, let me just demonstrate on that one. Did I close that again? No, I didn't. Okay. Now, the way I have things set up, I've changed my methodology. I'm following Diger's methodology because I want to use, as much as I can, the same settings that Diger's using. The only thing I've done differently, and I'm hoping that he'll follow suit, and hopefully we could probably work out a way to organize our stuff, but I'd like to do it in lockstep. The make.conf file was getting awfully big, and it can get huge, because you're going to see some of the things that I'm able to do here. So I'm actually, I'm not going to use this because there is a better way to do this. I'm going to, I'd rather not have the few errors that might take place that I've yet to discover because I have the -s there, and I'd rather just, figure out where the problems actually are and have a way to figure out what they are, where they are, instead of everything just working and not knowing where the errors were, because everything's automatic. Which is not a bad solution. It's just that then I'm kind of in the dark as, if I have to deal with the other situation, then I got to turn it off, turn it on. At the end of the day, we want everything just to go smoothly. People just download package source, use Diger's local patches. I'm hoping he's going to bring my patches into his. And they can just roll, and they could, literally by doing nothing, except for typing make and going into the various categories, they'll have 4,800 packages at least. So, now, the setup here that I have, and the way Diger has it, right now, when the source code is downloaded and it's unzipped, it actually goes into this directory, which is a different location than where the make files are. So this is not in the package source directory. It has its advantages. If I wanted to make clean really quickly, I would just Windows select all, file, move to trash, and I'd be able to start over again without having to type make clean or having to copy back over the rest of the stuff. separation between the source and the make files is good, is a good thing in my mind. Now so what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to go into net, and I'm just going to do the lazy man's clean, and it is actually quicker this way. Or I don't have to worry about it. As long as it's out of the path, I get to start again, and if it's slow, well, it's slow. But it's in the background or somewhere else, not interfering with what I'm trying to do. I don't have to wait for the terminal to free up for me to try to start again, or the directory to free up for me to try to start again. So right now, if I were to attempt to build, now that the trash is empty, that was a lot faster than it's ever been. It will, but instead of doing that, I'm going to go and go through the structure. Now the point of this whole thing is one, to demonstrate the importance of, if you do get my patches, and if you do get Daiger's patches, I recommend you get both. But they're in two different places, which is a problem, at least at this stage, because we're just getting started. You also want to get you probably want to get my settings and then update them for anything Daiger has. You're going to want to spend some time looking at these settings and making sure that you have them all. So I'm really going to want to unify with Daiger on these settings, actually. Okay. Why? Because when we deploy to other people, we want people to know that they have them all. They have all the solutions that we've come up with. So here, boot home package, etc., there's a standard make.conf. And basically I have this one file included. This is actually a file that Daiger made, but I've changed it to be another set of daisy chains. Let's take a look at that. So it's in boot home package, etc., package source. It's called haiku.make. And what this is just a list of all the files that I have settings in. So I have two types right now, at least the way I've done it, or three different types. The first two are all about the way package source behaves in a very, very general sense. Meaning, how long is it going to be before it time if I just go look at it, do some examples here. So it's custom feed. Custom features are things like, am I going to allow vulnerable packages? Am I going to skip the license check? And to back up, you don't have to do it this way, but you're going to have one giant make.conf file, and it may get to the point where it's so large that you may already have this thing over here and add it down here and not know. So I wanted to get things, I started to separate things out because I realized that this file can get really big, and once it does, it may not be so easy to find the settings that you had. So I try to give names to these things, and this is just something I've pretty much made up myself. There's no standard, there's no nothing, you know. Pretty much a convention I'm following. I hope Daiger will do it. Right now, of course, since he doesn't speak English all that well and I don't speak Russian all that well, it may be a little difficult to discuss a framework for configuration files. Anyway, so here's the fetch timeout. Here's package developer, no checksum. Some of these are Daiger settings. This one actually I don't even know what it does. Package developer, yes, you know, if you don't have it there for some of these things, like no checksum, there's no point in having a no checksum equals no. You might as well just have blank. Custom file locations, I separated that just because, you know, things build and boot work, packages download to boot dist files. That's Daiger's choice. My choice is the final package destination thing, of which I have had a slight improvement, and I almost had a solution where it was doing exactly what I wanted it to do, but there were some packages that were having issues, and it tells me there's some deep inner workings of package source that are not completely in sync, and I probably should mention that. Maybe this weekend when I'm not so tired. Okay, so these two daisy chains of the haiku.make. These are basic general settings. Then I have global settings, which are more of the shotgun, less the scalpel. So let's just look at what I have in here. So in here, now, just because I'm placing these files under global doesn't mean that they will act in a global fashion. The content of the files themselves dictate whether it's going to act in a global fashion or on a per package fashion. I'm using the word global to describe this setting. The settings that are included in the files in this folder will literally attempt to apply themselves to every file, package that builds. So if I want to add a make file to every package that builds, which in this case I have LNetwork. It's every package that's going to build is going to try to insert the network library into building transform. If building transfer is able to do that. Building transform isn't able to do that in every single case. A couple times I wanted to add library root or library expat. Don't remember when those were. I have it commented out now. It's probably overkill. It's probably better if I find out which of the rare circumstances I actually have to use these and move it down to the same equivalent library under packages. File under packages. If it exists. If it doesn't, I just add the verbiage and try to look for an example and try to apply it on a package by package basis. And probably the better examples are in the package directory. We'll discover what's in global. Then we have this built-in thing. If I didn't want to use the Z libraries that came with Haiku, I'd change that to no. So that really doesn't do anything, but it is an example. C flags will attempt to add C flags to every single build. That's what I used to use to override the location of the headers. Contents of the spec file would point to my own headers in boot home package, etc. No, boot home package include. It was a roundabout way to do it, but all I have to do is uncomment that, copy the headers over, but I haven't done that, but it's a way to do it. You can also insert other C flags this way for every one if you just have C flags. This is the equivalent of putting C flags in the make.conf directory. The way to differentiate to a specific package, I'll show you. You can choose the compiler you want to use if you have other compilers available. You could try to pass configure arguments for every single or for certain types of packages that use GNU configure. Dagger has these settings that'll attempt to pass over these configure arguments for every GNU configure kind of build. At one point I thought it was a good idea when I was not very experienced to pass on enable shared and where my prefix was and my include directory or where the specs were. That was a different attempt to get it to work when C flags didn't work. But I have them commented out. So if you have a pound sign on the left there, it's deactivated. Default packages, basically, if any package wants either curses or ncurses, it'll use ncurses. These I have commented out. This is saying the Kerberos default is MIT-KRB5. That's one of Dagger's choices. I've added that in there. Dagger has a setting about fonts I don't completely understand, but I think it does something good. You can pass LD flags, and I've just kind of separated them out. At one point, and I thought this is another way to pass the network library or library root to every single build. Eventually, I really don't want this to be all that populated. Okay, let's just go to the big, because some of these are going to be the same thing. And in general, you can see I have an add a library to the makefile, substitute a library to the makefile, remove a library from the makefile, and other methods to control things. So here's removing, and it looks almost the same. You're using build leak transform, but you have this RM there. So this will just remove the library from the build process, but it doesn't add anything. Then there's something called substituting, which Deiger came up with. So this will trade the math library for library root, pthreads for library root, and this does it on a global basis. On every build, if it finds NSL, it'll try to substitute NSL for network in those circumstances that it can, and it's probably got about 80% rate of success, I will say. Substitute classes is a more direct method where you target a certain file in the build directory. I'm targeting a capital M makefile, lower makefile. Jonathan Perkin did a blog on this, and so I've used that example. Right now it's disabled, but if I had this activated, it would try to add library network to every single makefile with a capital M or lower M. And there's more things I could do with that, but it'd probably be better, again, to do it on a case-by-case basis. Substituting, I don't remember if I opened this, but yeah, this is the one that Deiger came up with. Okay, now you can do the same kind of thing on a package-by-package basis, but you have to specify the package path. And what the package path is the category and the name of the package. And then you use the same kinds of terminologies. So what Deiger's set up is, if I try to build FFmpeg2, which is in Pkgsrc's multimedia category, it'll use package sources GCC, and it'll use version 4.7. Apparently, some issue came up for Deiger, and that was the solution for him. Configure environments. Again, just for the Qt libraries, he'll pass these configure command line options to the package instead of having to, do the configure thing and pass it on. It just passes it on. Now, these settings can also be put into the package source makefile for the package, but it works a little bit differently. Instead of specifying a package path, because this is on a global basis, when you're in the makefile, you have to say if the operating system is Haiku, pass the configure argument, and then an end if. At least that's the way to make it portable. Or behave nicely with other operating systems that don't want these config arguments passed on. Right now, we have a lot of stuff outside. In fact, we have all of our stuff outside there, because if it's not going to get folded into we haven't figured out how to get things folded into Pkgsrc yet. So if it's not going to be folded in, we don't want to have a bunch of scattered makefiles by which we don't know where settings are and lose some of our advances as a result. Until such time as we can get those things folded into Pkgsrc, we're doing it this way. This is just miscellaneous types of things. So, and there are times when one of the benchmark categories, NetPipe, needs the verbiage to be like this to pass it on for a successful build. For NTTP, it needed to be just lib equals network, Now, these are all things that could be patches, but they don't have to be patches. If your compiling tool set has the ability to pass these kind of things on, that's great. Now let's get to the hard links, and this is what I'm interested in for bind 99 there. Hard links basically is what I want to do is add, I'm going to right now, or package path is like that. It's net and bind 99. then use tools platform.ln ln-s. See? Alright, so let's get back to bind 99, I suppose. That should already be made clean. I've already emptied it out, so just do. Look at some of these other things. It's going to take a little while. These are all things, and if I don't have these files listed on here, it's not going to get daisy chained up into the make.conf. So basically all extensions of make.conf. LD flags to pass on to specific packages. I think it's a miscellaneous way to deal with this I should probably put under miscellaneous. But if I get a lot of libraries under miscellaneous, I'll probably end up putting it under this line. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. They all daisy chain into the make.conf. But you can see it's just another method to do things. These are specific package options for specific packages. The diagram's set up, so I put them here. This is something I found that these packages will fail to build because this R-dynamic option was being used. The build link transform will take that out as if it's not even there, and so all these packages will build as a result. And that's the case. So in all these things where I have, that's the fix. Now there may be a combination of patches in that, but if you just use my patches and you don't have any of these things, for example, benchmark and TTCP will not build unless you have a setting like this. And what I do is when I update my GitHub, I also update all these setting files. So if you checked out my GitHub, just use these. Just use this whole daisy chain set, the make.conf on the top, and then these subcategories. And then you can add things, and I really have to figure out. And I've never seen a patch for these things, but eventually there's got to be some way to work out how to make everything work well. He's done the package options. Let's see, where I got that. Remove the makefile library on a patch by package basis. Same methodology, but I'm patching it to specific paths. These are various. This is a method. Substitute classes, and this I haven't actually added anything yet, but I know what the methodology is. Okay. So the important message is that one, with these settings, I'm able to avoid patching stuff, and I could probably just keep this forever. You know, if a whole new version of any of those packages come out, but they still have the same issue, I don't have to be remaking patches for any of those things. They're just there. They work. That part of the solution's done. But you want to get both things. The way Dagger has it set up, he has one make.conf file and his local patches all in one kind of set of settings and pretty simple, straightforward instructions. Mine would work the same way. You just have to download the whole directory structure, put it in there. I'm hoping they're going to be the same, and I hope he's going to do something like this. Break it up, because these things are going to get big. I could already tell you, I'm just starting the process. Eventually, we're going to have this very large file just for math libraries, and it'll also be a very nice list. Hey, these are all the packages that we need to take care of the math library on. Let's see how this build's going. It's still going. Now, it might still stop, because I haven't actually... I might have the strings issue come up, but... so anyway, hopefully I was somewhat clear that if you do get my... Okay, so if you get my patches, you also want to get Diger's patches. You choose whatever set of settings you want to use, but you're at a big disadvantage if you don't use either Diger's or my make.conf file. Which means you're probably going to want to use the same kind of directory structure that we have. Basically, we have the Pkgsrc files in... I have it under boot home Pkgsrc package source. A lot of the time it doesn't matter where that stuff is. The settings just want to know what the root of package source is. Or within the root of package source where to go. Notice the package path only had the category and the name of the package. What's this guy? But if you so if you get, you're going to want to get his patches, his settings, my patches, my settings, package source, unzip it, put his local patches in the local patches directory, which for both of us, we have the same settings. The only difference is, in fact, I've used all of Diger's settings. He has one file. I have a number of files. I probably have more settings because I've not only used his stuff, but I've also added settings that I found that would lead to build success. Now it looks like maybe, are we in the build link yet? I really can't tell. And technically we are in the build link anyway, but we started to use terminology like build link, that's when it conked out before. And I always test these things, so I even test my patches before I put them up. This is the first time that I've actually been comfortable with my patches. I could say that every single patch that I've used, that I've done, none of them involve me removing code that I didn't understand that caused a build failure. And I built everything I've done before, so I'm happy with that. I don't know how long bind 99 is going to take, but I do want to hope to bring that to success. I'm also trying to update this, which is basically my list. I have these things uploaded in a much cleaner text file format. I actually have stats for each category. Some aren't as complete as others. Some that are smaller categories or had more build success, I've gone to the trouble of actually to say, this is up in the Confederate patches under stats. I'm probably going to move those. What the cause was. If this is original error, that means I've solved the problem. If it just says missing, then that means I haven't solved it. And of course, these aren't up to date because I haven't finished building everything in this new system. So it's going to be like that. I'll be releasing patches for stuff that's newer than I have stats for, and as time goes on. But as time goes on, I'll update my stat pages. And what those are designed to do is, say you just want to know something that you've never tried to build before, and you haven't found any guidance or any patches for out there at all. You just want to know whether, if you try to build it, if it would build. And sometimes you'll find out that's true. Well, it'll build if it, of course, you have the benefit of our settings, if we don't have a patch for it. The quick way to find out whether something's going to build out of the set of 11,000 that Pkgsrc includes is, one, do I say it's installed? Or if it's blank, it means I never even got a chance to try. If the list has installed, it means it just built. If it has installed with a number to the right of it, that means that I had to do something to get it to build, but eventually I just got it to build. And I'll usually make a notation as to what the error is, what the file was. Now, I haven't done that with strings. There's just so many of them. In fact, it's a good thing that Stiffy actually did change that, because for the Pkgsrc, it's going to hurt Pkgsrc. No, actually, I put it over here. I'm just about ready to leave, but I'm really trying. All of these 26 files needed to have the strings header added to them, to it. So it's a good thing he put the stopgap header in. Although that, Pkgsrc is a bigger package, and I did have a build success because the foundation was Diger's patches, and I just came in and happened to be here for this event, and then I got the strings in there. I haven't loaded that up yet, and I'm probably going to do it this weekend, so... Okay, so we're... Basically, this is pretty much built. It didn't have an issue with... it didn't get this far before, basically. So, that's the difference between success and fail for that build. But it's also the difference between success and failure if a build needs library network, if a build needs to remove the math library, the pthreads library, things like that. It's still never done. So you're not going to have some successes if you just use the patches. It's not just about the patches. And with the... If I were to try to roll with just the patches that I have, I'd have a lot more work to do. Many more patches. And, a lot more. And I'd probably still be, working on... All the fixes would be simple, but I'd probably still be struggling with a lot of these packages in the archivers category, which I have 76 out of 104, actually. So that's done. I could probably build DNS perf. And once I build that, I've successfully re-implemented what I did before, but this time, 1, I've created patches for everything instead of saving full files. 2, I know what I've changed. 3, it'll be able to fold in. And it fits in with Diger's patches. I haven't duplicated any of Diger's patches. I only make my own supplemental ones to his. And I've uploaded them. And so basically when I'm done with this whole process, anybody else should be able to do exactly what I've done. Build just as many packages that I have, so long as there hasn't been a fundamental or a significant issue that comes up. The temporary strings issue was a significant issue. But if I build those, the issue will go away. It's fairly quick. So now what's going on here? This is new. It's not just because of the math. I can see the math library is there, but the math library usually isn't cause of failure. Anyway, I'm too tired, but for now, everything else will be fine. Once I get it solved, I'll put the patch up. If I don't, then that'll be my first loss of functionality as a result of moving forward. That's it. But hopefully I've explained things about how things work. So right now we're in a state of flux. but we're starting, and we have a pretty good setup, and it's not going to take me long to get through all the categories. Maybe a month or two, and we'll have patches for everything, and we're going to keep them maintained, stabilize, and then try to add those to Haiku Porter if they're not there already, and keep abreast of the overall goal is to keep abreast of where Haiku is and how things are building within it. But conversely, what needs to be done to the things that built before to keep them building, so we don't lose as source code evolves. It's easier to catch what the changes are and come up with a solution on a smaller scale rather than like 3 years later coming back. So I want to get to a point where I'm on top of it. If something changes, I'm there, and if we have to make a patch, it's there. We're right there, and then we're ready to actually start using the operating system and build things. And we think there aren't going to be many changes to headers and things like that. We're ready, instead of having to rebuild from having left off and kind of gone stagnant in 2010. So I'm going to try to fill in this gap and maybe get us applications if I learn how to do things. All right, I'm going to fall asleep.